The Forgotten Carnival. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Didn't Belong. Owen Baker hated quiet towns. The kind where the sidewalks cracked and the houses peeled, and everybody knew your name before you even introduced yourself. The kind where secrets clung to the air heavier than humidity. The kind where the wind didn't just whistle, it whispered. Black Pine, Pennsylvania, was one of those towns. Population, 872. Maybe 871 now that Mr. Cullen from the hardware store had passed last week. There were no malls here, no movie theaters, not even a decent diner unless you counted Shirley's Cafe, where the eggs tasted like regret and the waitresses refilled your coffee before you even asked. It was the kind of place Owen's father had grown up, and now, after his death, the kind of place Owen and his little sister Lila were stuck in. The truck jostled over a pothole, jarring Owen from his brooding. He tightened his grip on the frayed seatbelt and glanced sideways at the man driving, Arthur Baker, their grandfather. A man of few words and fewer smiles, with skin like old leather and hands stained by decades of engine grease. Arthur hadn't said much since picking them up from the bus station. Maybe that was fine. Owen didn't have much to say either. He watched the landscape crawl by, endless fields browned by late summer, fences leaning like old drunks, abandoned barns gutted by time. Somewhere in the distance, a forest line loomed thick and dark, like a wound against the horizon. Almost there, Arthur muttered, voice gravelly from too many cigarettes and too many disappointments. Owen didn't respond. He just slumped deeper into the seat. Lila, curled up in the back with her battered stuffed rabbit, was humming under her breath. Some tune Owen didn't recognize. Something slow. Sad. He didn't ask her to stop. The truck turned onto a narrow dirt road, overgrown with weeds that clawed at the sides. After a mile or so, the house came into view, a sagging, two-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a wraparound porch that leaned like it had seen too many hard winters. Home. Whether he liked it or not. Arthur killed the engine with a cough and a shudder. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Lila spoke, her voice small. Why does it feel heavier here? Arthur glanced at her through the rearview mirror but said nothing. Owen climbed out first, stretching his legs and taking a deep breath. The air smelled of dry grass, dust, and something else he couldn't quite place, something sweet and rotting at the same time. He grabbed their suitcases from the truck bed, while Arthur shuffled up the creaking porch steps. Rooms are upstairs, Arthur said, pushing the door open. Yours is the one with the blue door. Hers is next to it. Owen nodded, nudging Lila inside. The interior smelled like mothballs and memories. Wooden floors creaked under their sneakers. Family photographs, long faded, lined the hallway, faces Owen didn't recognize, smiling hollow smiles from behind dusty glass. He found the blue door. Inside, the room was simple, a narrow bed, a wooden dresser, a small window overlooking the cornfield. A desk sat in the corner, scarred by time and initials carved deep into the surface. Someone had once scratched R.B. Love's E.M. into the wood. Probably dead now, Owen thought. He dropped his bag on the floor, kicked off his shoes, and flopped onto the mattress, staring at the ceiling. The house groaned and settled around him, as if adjusting to the new occupants. That first night, Owen dreamed. He dreamed of carnival lights flickering in the distance, spinning wheels and swinging rides, bright and colorful against the endless darkness of the fields. He heard the faint sound of calliope music, cheerful but off, like a music box winding down too slow. And somewhere in the dream, a voice whispered, "Come and see." When Owen woke, the room was ice cold. The window was open, he didn't remember opening it. The curtains fluttered in the weak moonlight, and somewhere beyond the cornfield, he thought he saw a faint glimmer. A flicker of red and gold. But when he blinked, it was gone. He shook it off. Dreams. Nothing more. He wasn't a kid anymore. Downstairs, the house was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of a clock he couldn't see. He found Lila curled up on the couch in the living room, asleep under a heavy quilt. Arthur snored in his recliner, a forgotten cigarette burning low in the ashtray beside him. Owen stood there for a moment, unsure. Then he grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen, double-checked the locks on the doors, and went back upstairs. The cornfield seemed even closer now. Maybe it was just the way the wind bent the stalks. Maybe it was just the loneliness playing tricks on him. But Owen couldn't shake the feeling, not as he climbed back into bed, not as he pulled the covers over his head, not even as sleep dragged him under again. That something out there was waiting for him. Watching. And it had been waiting a very, very long time. Chapter 2, The Carnival in the Corn. The next morning, the world outside was drenched in mist. Not the gentle kind that rolls over hills like in postcards. No, this mist was thick, heavy, and clung low to the ground like it was trying to smother the fields. Owen stood at the kitchen sink, a chipped mug of black coffee in his hand, staring out across the endless rows of corn. The fog made the stalks look like an army, standing at attention, hiding secrets between their crooked ranks. Behind him, Lila munched quietly on a bowl of cereal, swinging her legs back and forth under the chair. Arthur was already gone, probably to the garage on the edge of the property, where he spent most of his days fixing engines that nobody drove anymore. "You okay, kid?" Owen asked, glancing over his shoulder. Lila nodded, but there was something distant in her eyes. Something, pulled thin. "I heard music last night," she said suddenly. Owen froze. "What kind of music?" She shrugged. "Happy. But broken. Like when you spin too fast on the merry-go-round and the song gets all weird." He tried to laugh it off. "Probably just the wind. Or Grandpa's TV." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Lila spooned another bite of cereal into her mouth. Between crunches, she whispered, "I saw lights too." Owen stiffened. He didn't say anything else. Instead, after breakfast, he told Lila to stay inside, and headed out toward the cornfield. The mist made everything feel smaller and larger at the same time. The porch, the truck, the crumbling barn, all of it swallowed in gray. Owen pushed into the field, the tall stalk scratching at his arms, whispering against his jeans. Every few feet, he paused to listen. At first, nothing. Just the rasp of dry leaves brushing together. Then he heard it. Music. High, sweet, distant. A calliope tune, twisting on the breeze. He pushed forward, faster now, heart hammering against his ribs. The fog thickened, and the corn closed in tighter, almost like it didn't want him to leave. He had to shove the stalks aside just to move forward. And then, he saw it. Through the mist, barely visible. A Ferris wheel. No, not just a Ferris wheel. A whole carnival. Tents in faded colors. Cotton candy stands. A carousel turning slowly with ghostly horses frozen in mid-prance. Rusted metal rides creaking under an invisible wind. The whole thing sat nestled in a clearing in the corn, a place that shouldn't have existed. Owen stared. Blinking. Blinking again. The image shimmered, like heat waves off asphalt. And then, just like that, it was gone. He stumbled forward, but where the carnival had been, there was now only a small, trampled clearing. Dry grass. Broken corn stalks. Nothing else. Had he imagined it? No. He could still smell it, a sharp tang of fried dough and old popcorn. He could still hear the fading echoes of laughter, brittle and wrong. He wasn't crazy. He knew what he had seen. Owen turned and hurried back to the house. Lila was waiting by the window, her eyes wide. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked, voice almost a whisper. Owen hesitated. Then nodded. Lila smiled, a strange, sad little smile. "They're calling us," she said. That afternoon, the fog didn't lift. Arthur returned around dusk, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that looked older than Owen himself. When Owen asked casually if there were ever festivals in Black Pine, Arthur stiffened. His eyes went sharp. Not for a long time, he said. Not since before your daddy was born. Owen pressed. But there used to be. Arthur wiped his hands slower. More deliberately. Yeah, he said finally. Used to be a traveling carnival came through. Set up in the cornfields. Kids loved it. Rides, games, the whole thing. So what happened? Arthur dropped the rag into the sink and didn't meet Owen's eyes. One summer, kids started disappearing. 3, 4 at first. Then 6. Then 8. Never found them. After that, folks stopped talking about the carnival. Stopped talking about a lot of things. Did anyone ever find out who was behind it? Arthur shook his head. No one smart enough, no one brave enough. He turned to Owen, his expression hard as iron. You mind the girl, he said. You keep her close. If you see anything, you stay away. You hear me? Owen nodded slowly. But part of him already knew it was too late. That night, as he lay awake listening to the house creak and sigh, Owen thought he heard the faint, tinny melody of a calliope drifting in through the cracked window. Soft. Broken. Inviting. He pulled the covers tighter around himself. And outside, in the misty corn, something waited. Watching. Smiling. Chapter 3, The First Ticket. The third day in Black Pine dawned hollow and gray. The sun tried to claw its way through the mist, but the fog was stubborn. It clung to the ground, wrapping the fields and houses in a wet, heavy silence. Owen woke with a jolt. Not from a nightmare. From a sound. A single, sharp clink on his windowsill. He sat up, heart pounding. The room was cold enough that his breath fogged the air. Carefully, he swung his legs over the edge of the bed and stood, moving toward the window. Outside, the cornfield waited. Still. Silent. But on the sill, resting as if placed there by invisible hands, was a piece of yellowed paper. No. Not paper. A ticket. He picked it up. It was stiff, thicker than a regular ticket, with faded gold lettering that shimmered faintly in the weak morning light. Admit 1. The Forgotten Carnival. Owen's throat went dry. He flipped it over. On the back, in looping cursive, someone had written. Tonight. Bring what you cannot live without. He stared at the words for a long time, fingers tightening around the ticket. A prank? Some leftover junk from decades ago? Or something worse? Downstairs, Lila was already dressed, sitting at the table swinging her legs, just like the day before. She had that faraway look again, like her mind was tuning into a different frequency. When she saw Owen, her face brightened. You got one too, she said. Owen's stomach twisted. She held up a ticket of her own, crumpled a little from being clutched too tightly. He sat across from her, lowering his voice. Where did you find it? Under my pillow, she said, grinning like it was Christmas morning. Arthur shuffled into the room just then, carrying a bag of feed for the chickens. Owen quickly slipped the ticket into his pocket. He knew, somehow, Arthur must not see it. Arthur poured coffee into a cracked mug and said nothing. He didn't have to. His eyes flicked between them, assessing, measuring, and something in his jaw tightened. Owen decided to play dumb. We were thinking of going for a walk later, he said. Arthur grunted. Stay out of the fields. Why? Arthur sipped his coffee. His hands trembled just slightly. No good comes from poking around where you don't belong. He left it at that. Later that afternoon, Owen and Lila headed toward the woods behind the house. They didn't need to speak. Something pulled at them, the same thread, the same rhythm. The woods were strange that day. The mist was thicker. The trees bent inward, crowding them. Somewhere, deep in the distance, Owen thought he heard the high, shrill whistle of a calliope, carried on a wind that didn't stir the leaves. They walked for what felt like hours. And then, they found it. Again. The carnival. But this time, it wasn't a dream. It stood there, vivid and bright in the center of a wide clearing, the Ferris wheel spinning lazily, lights blinking in rhythm with the broken calliope music. Tents of red and gold snapped in an unseen breeze. The scent of roasted peanuts, cotton candy, and something metallic, like rusted iron, filled the air. It was real. Lila gasped and clutched Owen's hand tighter. "See," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Owen didn't think it was beautiful. He thought it was hungry. Still, he felt his feet moving forward, one step at a time, drawn in despite every fiber in his body screaming no. A man waited at the entrance gate. He was tall, thin to the point of gauntness, dressed in a tattered tailcoat and top hat. His face was painted in white and red, not a clown's paint, but something older, something almost ceremonial. He smiled when he saw them. Wide. Too wide. "Welcome, welcome," he said, voice high and cheerful but cracking at the edges. "We've been waiting for you." Owen stopped a few feet away, pulling Lila back. The man bowed low, sweeping his hat across the muddy ground. "Tickets, please," he said, extending one long, gloved hand. Owen hesitated. Every instinct he had screamed to run. But then he looked down at Lila, her eyes full of wonder, full of trust, and something inside him cracked. He pulled the ticket from his pocket and handed it over. Lila did the same. The man smiled wider, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. He tore the tickets down the middle. A loud clang echoed through the clearing, the sound of old machinery lurching to life. The ride spun faster. The lights flared brighter. The music grew louder. The carnival had accepted them. The man gestured grandly toward the midway. "Enjoy yourselves," he said. "And remember." He leaned close, breath sour-sweet against Owen's ear. "The carnival remembers you, even if you forget it." Owen swallowed hard. Then, hand in hand with Lila, he stepped into the Forgotten Carnival. And behind them, the entrance gate swung shut with a hollow, final clang. Chapter 4, The Games We Forgot. The carnival was alive. Not in the way a place with rides and lights should be, no, it breathed. Every gust of wind felt like the place exhaling, every creak of the rides like bones stretching after a long sleep. Owen and Lila wandered past booths and tents, their shoes crunching on brittle straw scattered across the muddy ground. There were no crowds. No children laughing. No barkers shouting for attention. Only the two of them, and the weight of hundreds of unseen eyes. The first booth they came across was an old ring toss game. The bottles were crooked, dusted with grime. A teddy bear, missing an eye and half a face, slumped sadly on the top shelf of prizes. Owen started to move past it, but Lila tugged his hand. "Can I try?" He hesitated. The man behind the booth was impossibly still, his head cocked to one side, his skin waxy like a mannequin left out in the sun. When Owen met his gaze, the man's cracked lips peeled back in a smile that didn't quite reach his cloudy eyes. "First game's free," the man rasped. Lila beamed. Owen handed her a dusty red ring. She tossed it, a perfect shot. The ring landed around the neck of a dusty green bottle with a soft clink. There was a beat of silence. Then, the carnival shifted. Lights flickered. Music skipped. The booth attendant leaned forward and whispered. "One step closer." He handed Lila a small toy, a porcelain doll with glassy blue eyes and a cracked cheek. She hugged it to her chest. Owen's skin crawled. "Come on," he said, steering her away. Let's keep moving. They passed a carousel next. Its horses were carved from wood, paint flaking and peeling. Some had broken legs, twisted mouths frozen in mid-scream. As they walked by, Owen swore the carousel slowed, as if inviting them to ride. "Don't look at it," he muttered. Lila clutched the doll tighter. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. At the dart game, the balloons pulsed slightly, like breathing lungs. At the shooting gallery, the targets weren't painted clowns or ducks, they were faces. Realistic faces. Some of them familiar. At the funhouse, the mirrors didn't reflect reality, they reflected memories. Owen caught glimpses of himself, younger, laughing with his father. Lila as a baby, clutching their mother's hand. His parents' faces blurred, dissolving into mist as he moved past. He pulled Lila away before she could see too much. Before he could. "I don't like it here anymore," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Owen squeezed her hand. "Neither do I." They turned a corner and found a row of tents. One caught Owen's eye, not because of the colors or the sign, but because it smelled wrong. Sweet. Rotten. Familiar. The sign above the entrance read, "The Hall of Lost Things." Lila tugged at his sleeve. "I think, my bunny's in there." Owen blinked. "Your bunny? The one you lost?" She nodded, eyes wide. Before he could stop her, she darted inside. Owen cursed under his breath and followed. The interior of the tent was vast, impossibly vast, far bigger than it could have been from the outside. Rows and rows of shelves stretched into darkness, each one filled with broken toys, missing shoes, crumpled photographs, wedding rings, cracked glasses. And memories. Owen could feel them, thick in the air, pressing against his mind like cold, greedy hands. "Lila," he called, his voice swallowed by the heavy air. No answer. Panic surged through him. He ran between the shelves, searching desperately. There, ahead, a flash of Lila's blue hoodie. He sprinted toward her. She stood frozen in front of a shelf, staring up at a familiar object, her stuffed rabbit, worn and ragged. It sat on a pedestal, almost glowing. "Lila, don't," Owen started. But it was too late. She reached for it. The moment her fingers brushed the rabbit's fur, the tent shuddered. The shelves groaned. And from the shadows, figures began to emerge, children, dozens of them, faces pale and hollow, eyes empty. Their mouths opened, but no sound came out. Only whispers. Owen grabbed Lila, yanking her away from the pedestal. The rabbit fell to the floor with a soft thud. The children moved closer. Reaching. Grasping. Pulling at the air around them. Owen shoved past the shelves, dragging Lila behind him. They stumbled out of the tent into the misty midway, gasping for air. The carnival had changed. It was darker now. The lights dimmer, flickering in and out. The music slower, warped. The air smelled sharper, of blood and old sugar. The man in the top hat stood across the midway, watching. Smiling. Waiting. Owen pulled Lila close. "We're leaving," he said. But when he looked back the way they came, the entrance was gone. In its place, only more tents. More rides. More mist. They were trapped. And somewhere in the depths of the carnival, the carousel began to turn faster. The horses' broken mouths stretched wider. Almost grinning. Chapter 5, Echoes of the Lost. Owen and Lila ran. They tore through the misty midway, past the cracked tents and dead-eyed rides, through games that whispered promises and stalls that stretched out arms to grab them. But no matter which direction they chose, the carnival rearranged itself. It was alive, changing its pathways, closing exits, hurting them deeper. Finally, they collapsed behind a toppled popcorn stand, gasping for breath. Owen peered around the corner. The mist had thickened. Figures wandered aimlessly between the rides, children, teenagers, even adults. Some were half-faded, their bodies dissolving into mist with each step. Some wore clothes decades out of date, poodle skirts, Letterman jackets, suspenders. Owen realized with a sick lurch that they weren't just carnival goers. They were the missing. Ghosts trapped here by memory. Or worse, forgotten altogether. Lila clung to his side, shivering. "I want to go home," she whispered. Owen wiped sweat from his forehead, thinking fast. There had to be a way out. There had to be. As they crouched in the shadows, a voice drifted out from a nearby tent, soft, female, singing an old lullaby. Lila stiffened. "Mom?" she breathed. Owen's heart dropped into his stomach. "No, Lila. It's not her." But she was already pulling away, drawn to the sound. He chased her into the tent. Inside, it was warm. Too warm. Heavy with the smell of lavender and something metallic underneath, something that didn't belong. The tent was filled with mirrors. Not funhouse mirrors, real ones, old and cracked, their silver backing peeling like dead skin. Each mirror held a reflection not of themselves, but of memories. Owen saw his mother, alive, smiling, baking cookies in the kitchen when he was 6. His father lifting him onto his shoulders at the county fair. Himself, younger, laughing without a care in the world. Lila reached for one mirror, one where their family was whole again. "No!" Owen shouted. But her fingers brushed the glass. Instantly, her image inside the mirror froze, and a fine web of cracks spidered across the surface. Lila gasped and stumbled back. The mirror shivered, then slowly mended itself, but now, Owen noticed, Lila's reflection was missing. Wiped clean. He grabbed her hand and dragged her away before more damage could be done. The tent behind them sighed, a sound almost like satisfaction. Outside, the midway was quieter now. No music. No creaking rides. Just the faint hum of something breathing. Owen spotted a flicker of movement near the Ferris wheel. A girl. About his age. Maybe younger. She stood perfectly still beneath the rusted metal arms of the ride, staring at him. Her hair was tangled. Her dress was dirty. Her face. Familiar. Sadie Monroe. The girl from town. The one people said had disappeared 6 months ago. Owen approached cautiously, Lila tight at his side. "Sadie," he called softly. The girl flinched but didn't run. Instead, she beckoned. Owen hesitated, then followed. Sadie led them down a side alley between 2 towering tents, away from the heart of the carnival. The ground here was cracked, blackened. The lights flickered weakly, barely holding back the encroaching dark. Finally, she stopped in front of a tattered tent marked "Lost and Found." She turned to Owen, her voice dry as autumn leaves. "You don't escape by remembering who you are." Owen frowned. "Then how?" Sadie's cracked lips twisted into something between a smile and a grimace. "You have to remember what they took." Before he could ask more, she slipped away, vanishing into the mist. Lila tugged his sleeve. What did she mean? Owen shook his head. "I don't know." He turned to the lost and found tent, heart pounding. He pulled back the flap. Inside was darkness, deeper than night, deeper than forgetting. And somewhere inside that blackness, something moved. Something that knew him. Something that had been waiting. A whisper drifted out to meet him. "Come inside, Owen Baker. We've been saving your place." Chapter 6, The Pact of Silence. The lost and found tent swallowed them whole. Owen clutched Lila's hand as they stepped inside, the heavy flap falling shut behind them with a sound like a dying breath. At first, there was only darkness. Then, faintly, Images began to flicker on the black canvas walls. Like a broken film projector stuttering to life. Scenes from their own lives. Owen saw himself as a boy, crying on the playground after his mother forgot to pick him up. He saw Lila, sitting alone at the edge of a birthday party she hadn't been invited to. He saw Arthur Baker, staring into an empty crib decades ago, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles bled. Memories. Lost things. Lila whimpered. I don't want to see this. Neither did Owen. But the tent had other ideas. A figure stepped from the shadows. It wasn't Sadie this time. It was Arthur. Or rather, a reflection of him. Younger. Stronger. Eyes burning with guilt and something harder. The vision spoke, and the words chilled Owen to the marrow. You can't break the carnival. You can only feed it, or be fed to it. Owen shook his head. That's not real. But deep down, he knew. The truth was rotting just beneath the surface. Arthur had known. The town had known. Decades ago, they had made a pact. A bargain with the carnival. Silence in exchange for survival. When the carnival reappeared, they looked the other way. Pretended not to see the missing posters. Pretended not to remember the empty desks at school. Better to lose a few, than to lose everyone. The echoes of the past pressed in closer. Owen saw a gathering in a church basement, the old families, whispering behind locked doors. He saw Arthur signing his name at the bottom of a blood-stained ledger. He saw the children, Sadie among them, disappearing into the mist while their parents wept behind closed curtains. It hadn't been an accident. It had been the cost. Owen stumbled backward, heart hammering against his ribs. No, he said. It can't be. The carnival didn't steal the town's children. The town gave them. A booming laugh filled the tent, low, rich, almost joyful. Mr. Merrick. The master of ceremonies. The tent walls rippled like water, and the floor lurched beneath their feet. Lila screamed as the ground split open. Owen caught her just in time, pulling her back from the edge of an abyss that seemed to have no bottom. From deep within the chasm, voices rose. Crying. Begging. Laughing. Memories abandoned. Souls traded. Owen backed away, clutching Lila to his chest. We have to find a way out, he whispered. But the tent had shifted again. No exits. Only a narrow path forward, lit by lanterns that burned with sickly green flames. They ran. Down the path. Through the twisting corridors. Past visions of everything they'd ever lost. At last, they stumbled out into another clearing. And there, at the center, stood the Ferris wheel. It loomed impossibly large now, its metal skeleton groaning and swaying in the misty sky. Each car was filled. Not with riders. But with memories. Frozen moments. Half-forgotten faces. And in the highest car, barely visible through the fog, Owen saw her. Lila. Another Lila. Or the Lila that would be, if he failed. Her eyes were empty. Her face slack. Her body little more than mist stitched together by sorrow. Mr. Merrick stood at the base of the Ferris wheel, arms wide, a grin splitting his painted face. You see, boy, he called. You already lost her. You just haven't realized it yet. Owen clenched his fists. No, he growled. She's still here. I still have her. Merrick tilted his head, amused. Maybe, he said. For now. The carnival spun faster, the calliope music growing shrill, warped, frantic. Owen turned to Lila, the real Lila, and knelt before her. You have to remember, he said urgently. Remember who you are. Remember who we are. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, he said. But you're not alone. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're never alone. For a moment, everything stilled. The fog froze. The rides halted. The lights flickered. And then, Lila squeezed his hand. The Ferris wheel screamed. The image of the empty-eyed Lila in the highest car shivered, then fractured like a mirror struck by a hammer. Mr. Merrick's smile faltered. The carnival shuddered. Something deep beneath the earth roared, not in anger, but in hunger. A new hunger. The pact had been broken. The carnival would need a new offering. And it had already chosen its next meal. Chapter 7, The Man with the Painted Smile. The carnival was coming apart at the seams. The ground trembled beneath Owen's feet, cracks splitting the muddy midway. The ride screamed in protest, rusted metal twisting and groaning as if trying to tear free from the earth itself. The sky above Black Pine had turned a deep, bruised purple, swirling like the inside of a dying eye. Owen clutched Lila's hand as they staggered through the chaos, dodging collapsing tents and broken rides. There was no path anymore. No direction. The carnival was folding in on itself. And at the center of it all stood Mr. Merrick. The man with the painted smile. He was waiting beneath the Ferris wheel, his tattered tailcoat flapping in the hot, foul wind. His white face paint cracked and peeling, his grin wider now, impossibly wide, stretching ear to ear in a grotesque arc. When he saw Owen and Lila, he opened his arms. "Welcome to the grand finale," he called, voice booming over the screeching calliope. Owen pushed Lila behind him. "We're not playing your game," he shouted. Mr. Merrick's eyes gleamed. "Oh, but you already have," he said. "Every forgotten toy. Every lost memory. Every whispered regret. You've been feeding me your whole life without even knowing it." He took a step forward. Owen held his ground, fists clenched, body trembling. "You took them," Owen said. "The children. The families. You fed on them." Mr. Merrick tilted his head. "No," he said softly. "They gave themselves. In the end, they always do. It's easier to forget than to fight. Easier to give up a little piece of yourself than face the whole truth." The Ferris wheel groaned louder behind him, spinning faster, sparks flying from its rusted joints. The faces in the cars, the lost children, the forgotten souls, pressed against the windows, mouths open in silent screams. Lila whimpered behind Owen, clinging to the back of his jacket. He turned slightly toward her. "We have to end this," he whispered. "But how?" she cried. Owen didn't know. But deep down, something in the carnival's twisted rules clicked into place. It fed on memory. On what people gave away. If they could take it back. If they could remember what they had lost. They could starve it. He faced Mr. Merrick. "I remember," Owen said loudly. The carnival shuddered. Mr. Merrick's grin twitched. "I remember every face you stole. Every child you took. Every lie you whispered." He grabbed Lila's hand and squeezed it hard. "And I remember her. Every laugh. Every tear. Every moment." Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I remember my bunny," she sobbed. "I remember Mommy. I remember us." The ground cracked deeper. The tents burst into flames of blue and green fire. The rides collapsed inward, folding like dying animals. Mr. Merrick's smile finally faltered. He hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "No!" he shrieked. "You don't get to take it back. You made the pact. You chose to forget." Owen stepped forward, dragging Lila with him. "We didn't choose anything," he said. "You lied. You tricked them. But not anymore." The Ferris wheel screamed as the cars shattered one by one, releasing bursts of light into the churning sky. Faces, real faces, soared upward into the dark, disappearing like fireflies into the heavens. The lost were being set free. Mr. Merrick staggered back, clutching his chest. Cracks spidered across his painted face, leaking dark, viscous liquid. He laughed, a dry, broken sound. "You can set them free," he rasped. "But something must stay behind. The hollow demands a keeper." Owen felt the weight of those words settle in his bones. The carnival wouldn't just vanish. It needed an anchor. A memory to feed on. A soul to hold it in place. Mr. Merrick's gaze locked onto him. "Stay," he whispered. "And the girl goes free." Owen hesitated. Just for a moment. Long enough for the carnival to pulse, hungry, hopeful. But Lila tugged his hand, fierce and small. "No," she said. "We go together." Owen looked down at her, this stubborn, brave little soul who had followed him into a nightmare and never let go. He nodded. "Together. Always." He turned his back on Mr. Merrick. And ran. They sprinted across the crumbling midway, dodging falling debris, the screams of the dying carnival echoing behind them. The mist grew thicker, swallowing the world. The lights blinked out, one by one. Until there was only darkness. And the sound of their breathing. And the pounding of their feet. And then. They burst free. Out into the cornfields. Out into the cool night air. Out into a world that felt, for the first time, real. They collapsed onto the dirt, gasping. Behind them, the carnival shrieked one final, furious note. And then fell silent. When Owen looked back, there was nothing there. No tents. No rides. No Ferris wheel. Just a broken clearing in the corn, already being swallowed by the earth. The Forgotten Carnival was gone. But Owen knew better than to think it was over. He could still feel it. Waiting. Sleeping. Dreaming. And one day, it would return. Unless someone remembered. Unless someone never let it in again. He squeezed Lila's hand. And together, they walked home, through the mist, through the fields, toward a future still uncertain, but at least theirs. Chapter 8, The Heart of the Carnival. The night wasn't over. Not yet. Owen could feel it in the pit of his stomach, the hollow, gnawing pull of unfinished business. The mist that clung to the cornfields was thinning, but not dispersing. It lingered, trembling, like a dying breath waiting to be drawn back in. As he and Lila stumbled toward the farmhouse, something pulled at him. A voice. Not Merrick's. Not the carnival's. Something deeper. Older. Finish it. Owen stopped walking. The farmhouse stood ahead, its porch light flickering weakly. Safety. Home. But he knew, if he stepped inside now, he would only be postponing the inevitable. The Forgotten Carnival would return. It would wait, and it would grow hungrier. Unless he ended it. Now. He looked down at Lila. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears. She clung to her stuffed rabbit, silent but trusting. He knelt before her. "I have to go back," he said softly. Lila's eyes filled with fresh tears. "No," she whispered. "Don't leave me. I'll come back," he promised. "I swear." She shook her head violently. But Owen had already made his choice. He rose, kissed the top of her head, and handed her the key to the house. "Stay inside. Lock the doors. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, don't come out." And then he turned and walked back into the mist. The carnival wasn't gone. It was hiding. Waiting for him. Owen pushed deeper into the cornfields, heart hammering, breath misting the cold night air. And there, where the clearing had once been empty, it reappeared. Not the full carnival. Just one thing. A single tent. Black and gold. Tall enough to scrape the sky. The heart of the carnival. Owen stepped forward, feeling the ground pulse beneath him. He pushed through the heavy curtains. Inside, there was no floor, no walls, no ceiling. Just a void. And in the center of that void, a carousel. But not like any carousel he'd ever seen. The horses were skeletal, their wooden skin peeling. The poles were rusted rebar. The music was slow, distorted, a lullaby played backward. Sitting atop the central horse was Mr. Merrick. Or what remained of him. His painted face had cracked completely now, revealing a hollow space beneath. His body sagged, as if the energy that once animated him had been drained away. When Owen entered, Merrick raised his head. "You came back," he said, voice barely a rasp. Owen nodded. "This ends tonight." Merrick laughed weakly. "You can't kill what was never alive." Owen stepped closer. He remembered what Sadie had said. "You don't escape by remembering who you are. You escape by remembering what they took." Owen looked at the carousel. At each horse, at each pole. And he realized, they weren't rides. They were trophies. Each one held a memory. A life stolen. He approached the nearest horse. Embedded in its wooden chest was a locket, the same kind his mother used to wear. Next to it, another, a crumpled baseball cap. A ballet slipper. A broken toy truck. Memories. Pieces of lives ripped away to feed the carnival. Owen reached out and touched the locket. A shock raced through him, images flashing behind his eyes. His mother singing in the kitchen. His father cheering at a Little League game. Lila, as a baby, sleeping in his arms. He yanked the locket free. The carousel screamed. The ground shook. Merrick howled, a sound of rage and despair. Owen moved from horse to horse, ripping away the trophies one by one. With each memory reclaimed, the carnival grew weaker. The music warped further. The void trembled. The mist thinned. Merrick lunged at him, skeletal fingers clawing, but Owen ducked and kept moving. At the final horse, embedded in its cracked chest, was a single object. A mirror. Small. Handheld. Owen hesitated. He looked into it. At first, he saw nothing. Then he saw himself, not as he was now, but as he could have been. Alone. Forgotten. Consumed. He gritted his teeth. And smashed the mirror against the carousel pole. The carousel stopped. The music died. The tent collapsed inward with a deafening roar, pulling Merrick into the void. The last thing Owen heard before darkness swallowed the carnival whole was Merrick's final whisper. "You'll forget. You always forget." And then, silence. Real silence. Owen opened his eyes. He was lying in the cornfield. Above him, the stars blinked in a clear, endless sky. The mist was gone. The air smelled clean, damp earth and distant pine. No music. No laughter. No painted smiles. He sat up slowly, head pounding. Lila came running toward him, barefoot, clutching her rabbit. She flung herself into his arms. "You came back," she cried. Owen hugged her tight. "I told you I would." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, letting the night heal what it could. The Forgotten Carnival was gone. For now. But deep down, Owen knew. Somewhere out there, just beyond memory, it still waited. Dreaming. Whispering. And someday, it would call again. But not tonight. Tonight, they remembered. And that was enough. Chapter 9, The Things We Leave Behind. Spring came early to Black Pine that year. By the end of March, the snowmelt had disappeared, and the fields bloomed in soft greens and wild yellows. The cornfields were still bare, but the ground no longer whispered beneath Owen's boots. It simply was, silent, unremarkable, at peace. The carnival was gone. Truly gone. Or so it seemed. Owen and Lila had stayed. They had no real choice. The farmhouse was theirs now, inherited from a grandfather who had signed his soul away long before Owen was born. Arthur Baker had vanished the night of the storm, no body, no goodbye, as if the earth itself had swallowed him in payment for past sins. Maybe it had. Owen didn't ask questions anymore. He just took care of Lila. Fixed the house. Mended the fences. Planted a garden out back where the ground felt clean. Life, as much as it could, moved forward. Still, there were reminders. The back corner of the cornfield never grew quite right, no matter how much Owen tilled and seeded. Some nights, Lila would wake crying, insisting she heard carousel music drifting through the trees. The old iron key Arthur had once worn around his neck, the one Owen found in a drawer 2 weeks after the carnival vanished, grew cold whenever a storm rolled in. And sometimes, in the early dawn hours, when the mist hung low and thick over the fields, Owen could almost swear he saw it again. A flicker of lights. A hint of music. A shadow moving just beyond the reach of memory. He never went looking. Not anymore. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. One Saturday in late April, Owen and Lila walked into town for the spring festival. It wasn't much, a few booths, a bake sale, a tired-looking band on a makeshift stage, but it was normal. And that, Owen decided, was worth something. Lila wore a yellow dress and carried a balloon. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months when she won a stuffed bear at a ring toss booth. Owen caught himself smiling more than once. They were healing. Slowly. Quietly. They passed Mrs. Carter's bakery, where the smell of fresh bread wrapped the sidewalk like a warm blanket. They waved at Deputy Jameson, who handed out root beers from a cooler in the back of his truck. They lingered near the library steps, where someone was telling ghost stories to a crowd of kids. Black Pine looked the same. But Owen knew it wasn't. Not really. A town doesn't make a deal with a nightmare and walk away untouched. It carries scars. Invisible ones. Wounds buried deep under the surface, waiting for the right storm to stir them up again. As the afternoon faded into evening, Owen and Lila walked back home, the balloon bobbing gently in the twilight air. The wind stirred the grass. The sky burned soft gold at the edges. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Owen let himself believe, just a little, that maybe they were free. Maybe they had escaped. Maybe they had left it all behind. But back at the farmhouse, something waited. Something small. Something forgotten. In the attic, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, lay a single object. A carnival ticket. Faded gold. Crisp edges. Still fresh. Admit one. The Forgotten Carnival. The wind through the cracks in the wood stirred it gently. And if you listened closely, very closely, you could almost hear it whisper. Remember us. Remember us. Remember us. The ticket waited. Because some things you never truly leave behind. Not really. Not forever. The end.